All right, let's begin with Minority Leader in Parliament, Haruna Idrisu, who has been accusing the Speaker of Parliament of stifling the minority's efforts to hold government accountable. The minority is unhappy that the Speaker did not allow Haruna Idrisu to ask the Greek minister more than one question when he appeared before the House. In fact, Minority Chief Whip Muntaka Mubarak angrily accused the Speaker of disrespecting the minority leadership. Parliamentary correspondent Joseph Opoku Gakpo reports Muntaka Mubarak actually threatened a walkout. Let's go back to Parliament now and have a look. All right, so our parliamentary correspondent Joseph Opoku Gakpo is live with the Chief Whip Muntaka Mubarak in Parliament. Let's cross over to the House and have some chat with him. Hello, Joseph.
Aisha, we are live
exactly
here from Parliament. I have with me here
Exactly what are the concerns of the minority?
Let me put that to the Honorable Muntaka Mubarak directly. He's the Minority Chief Whip. Earlier in the day, he angrily raised concerns on the floor of Parliament about how the Speaker has handled the business of the House today and even before. What exactly are your issues?
Well, thank you and good afternoon to your listeners. Let me say it's been very worrying. It is the wish of all of us that we get former MPs to be speakers, hoping that they will help broaden the frontier of democracy in our country. But it's just too unfortunate that the current speaker, Professor Michael Quay, is frustrating the minority. He is really, really frustrating us. And the sad thing is that he's just denying us even the opportunity to be heard. That's the least, is the cheapest and the common thing that all minorities around the world can easily have. Just say what you want to say so that you can be ruled out or denied what you want. Look, the other paper of the House is a very important paper. The business that are put on the other paper are things that are decided at the business committee. And in the business committee, if you look at the composition, it's composed of both sides, the leadership. Yesterday, if you remember, there were questions today to be answered by the Interior Minister and other questions. You just come in the morning and then the questions vanish. Nobody even has the courtesy. Nobody in the leadership will have the courtesy to just tell you that, oh, because of A, B, C, D, this is the reason. I want to challenge them. When we were in the majority, I was in charge. And in the night, we would do everything to first get a member of the leadership to tell them why, and then to get the member to tell him why. The sad thing is that you notice of late, a member from the minority leadership will be up and the speaker will just not call you. Look, we don't speak for ourselves. We don't get up from the minority front to speak for ourselves. We speak for our group. So when someone is having something that he wants to say and you know he will not be called, he will come and tell those in the leadership. If you remember the day before yesterday, I stood there for almost 15 minutes. When we were doing these agents, whether the bills were agents, the process we used was wrong. Because the Constitution, Article 106.13, clearly says that it's the duty of the committee. I wanted to raise the speaker's decision. He would not call. Yesterday in the morning, we went to his office to draw his attention that when we get up, just hear us. He will not. This morning, you saw it. I was up. He would just not call until I see the opportunity when they wanted to sort permission for a deputy minister. And when I started speaking, if you can go and play the decision, he went frustrating. You remember he has had the same issue with Honorable Haruna Idrisu the last meeting. Many times the minority leader will be up, he won't. Check the records, check the Hansard. J.H. Mensah could be up standing for 2 hours and he will be heard. When we came to Honorable Babin, yes, initially there were challenges. He had free space. 8 months ago, minority leader, after somebody has asked this question, the same today majority leader, Che, who asked more than 20 questions. All of a sudden, you want to make the space so narrow that minority will not even have the opportunity to vent what they want to say. Then what are we sitting there doing?
Okay, so even to the extent that earlier in the day, you threatened that you, the minority, were going to walk out if the speaker wasn't going to give you the opportunity to speak on the floor. Weren't you taking this too far?
Tell me, what are we sitting there doing? If he won't allow us to be heard, he won't give us the space to do anything, then what are we sitting there doing? We are sending notice that, look, it is our wish that we all rally around our father. Because the speaker...
Well, earlier, Muntaka Mubarak threatened to walk out of Parliament. Let's hear what happened in Parliament.
Minority Chief Whip, are you opposed to...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Unfortunately, I kept standing, you couldn't catch
Honorable Minority Leader.
Mr. Speaker,
Honorable
it is important that the Speaker respects the front bench of the minority. Why do you want to couple us? You have to give us space to be able to put our views. Mr. Speaker, you cannot stifle the space for the minority leadership. Mr. Speaker, yesterday, the day before yesterday, there were questions that were supposed to be asked yesterday in this House. They were not on the other paper. You didn't give us the opportunity to raise them. Yesterday, we advertised. There were questions to be asked today again. They've not been put on the other paper. You are not giving us the opportunity to even air our views. Why? No, we raise it at the leadership meeting. Why? If you don't want us, then we want us. So that you take the House. If you don't want us to be here, if the Speaker thinks we should not be here to air our views and concerns of our side, we will be ready to walk out so that you can't have a business with only the majority. Why?
Honorable Majority Leader. Honorable Majority Leader. Honorable Order. Honorable Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, if a colleague has any issue about a directive given by the Speaker, I believe that the orders provide the avenue to address the matter. Mr. Speaker, our orders, Order 93.5 provides the conduct of Mr. Speaker, members, the Chief Justice, and judges of the Superior Court of Judicature shall not be raised. Shall not be raised, except upon a substantive motion. Except on a substantive motion. The Speaker, so the orders provide sufficient avenues to redress any grievance of a member. This is a house of rules and procedure. It's a house of rules and procedure. Mr. Speaker, so if my colleague, the Chief Whip for the minority, is unhappy about a directive or a ruling by the Speaker, the avenues are open to the person. And I think it would be wrongful for the member to rise up and be referring to the conduct of the Speaker, not on a substantive motion, and at the same time be banging the table. The Speaker, that is unacceptable. That is unacceptable.
When I rose, I specifically, and I want the Hansard if you want to print it for you, I said, I will make an application to contest your ruling. It was respect for the rules. Go back to the Hansard. A moment ago when I rose, I deliberately chose my words. I said, I will make an application because I was unhappy about your ruling. But because I respect the rules, I serve you notice that I will make an application. Mr. Speaker, when the Honorable Whip rose, Mr. Speaker, you are head of this organ of government. You are master, we are masters of our own rule. You are chief supervisor of the rules. Mr. Speaker, when I rose, you know the essence of parliamentary question is significant and integral to the exercise of oversight. Your refusal to allow me, even as minority leader, to proceed can only be an effort to stifle oversight. And you did. Here, Mr. Speaker, he has been here before. Someday he may be here again. As minority leader, if you want, we will print copies of what you stood here and said and questioned of ministers. Not one, not two. So, Mr. Speaker, in the exercise of your authority, be guided by Article 2. Yes. In the exercise of your authority. In the exercise of your authority. So, we respect you as chair of this house. We have a responsibility as leadership to support you in maintaining order in this house. Even when you deny,
honorable minority,
even when
you have made an invitation to contest a ruling.
Absolutely.
Do you want to make your argument here and now? If not, if you may please take your chair and in the appropriate manner proceed with what you intend to do. Honorable members, you all know that at the end of questions, I give a different, separate opportunity to leadership of both sides to ask questions. You know that I have consistently made it clear to both sides of the House, majority and minority, evidenced by Hansard, that no one will be allowed a double bite at the cherry, as I have said on many occasions, to both the minority and the majority. In all honesty, you all know that. So at that point, you decide whether it will be the majority leader, deputy majority leader, or whoever should ask the question. And you know it very well. Therefore, let me make it very clear that this period was most unnecessary, and that in future, what is going to happen is no leadership shall have a double bite at the cherry. Thank you very much. And in fact, this is one of the occasions where most members have been allowed to ask as many questions as possible. And in fact, the majority of questions were deliberately allowed from the minority side, as we borne out by Hansa.
Let's still stick with Parliament because our Greek Minister, Dr. Akoto Usefri, earlier told Parliament the 4 army worm pest destroying farms in the country has been defeated. He says the extent of destruction is largely exaggerated and assures the country the invasion will not affect government's planting for food and jobs program. Let's speak with our parliamentary correspondent, Joseph Opoku-Gakpo, who's still on the line. Good afternoon to you. Thanks for coming back on the line, Joseph.
Good afternoon to you, Aisha.
Joseph, how did the minister explain that the invasion will not in any way affect the planting for food and jobs program?
In fact, the question that came up on the floor today, for which he came around to respond to, had to do with the progress of work so far as the planting for food and jobs policy is concerned. And so he listed what has been done so far, including how they've invested more than 157 million in the entire exercise so far. And then he listed out the challenges that are militating against the entire project. And he mentioned the fall armyworm invasion as one of those challenges, and went on to indicate that there's been the immediate deployment of chemicals and resources to deal with this. But then subsequent to that, the ranking member on Parliament Science and Technology Committee, Ebenezer Telabi, put a specific question to him as to how this fall armyworm invasion would affect the planting for food and jobs policy. And he said that as far as he, the minister, is concerned, they have deployed chemicals to help fight this particular pests that have invaded farms. So far, the invasion is under control. And in fact, to quote him specifically, he said that the fall armyworms have been defeated and that there's been an exaggeration in terms of how much destruction has been done. He said that they had put out the figure of about 112,000 hectares that have been affected by the fall armyworms, but indicated that it's only 14,000 of that has been destroyed in terms of how much destruction is caused. And went on to say that this constitutes less than 2% of the entire farm sizes in the country. And so this won't have any impact at all on the planting for food and jobs policy and also the nation's food security generally.
If the minister says the invasion or the pest has been defeated, what does he mean by that? Has it been defeated partly or wholly? How did he explain that?
Well, he makes the point that as soon as they detected that it had become an issue and that it was destroying fields, they immediately deployed chemicals to the various areas. They imported a lot of these chemicals and made sure that the various areas that have been affected by the pest invasion had these chemicals. And so, as far as they are concerned, so far, all of those areas that were affected by the pest invasion have seen a situation where the chemicals have been used to control them. And so, just to quote him again, he says the whole situation is under control and that the pest has been defeated in the sense that it's not causing as much destruction as was seen earlier. But for now, they have everything well covered.
Did he outline any long-term measures by government to avoid a recurrence of this invasion?
He mentioned that. He indicated that there is research that is ongoing into biological control in terms of using other pests that feed on the fall armyworm. This is something that they hope to do going into the future, and some research work has begun in that regard already. That's the long-term plan. And also, he said that they'll be creating strategic stocks of chemicals in the regions and districts so that then at any point in time when there's any form of outbreak, then they would control it. He again said that they would intensify staff and farmer training when it comes to the detection of this particular pest. And so he said going into next year, that's the objective that they have on their mind, to put in the necessary measures as much as possible to avoid the recurrence of this. In fact, there was a question to him about how come we couldn't prevent it, looking at the invasion that we saw last year. And he virtually blamed the previous administration and went on to indicate that if the kind of measures that he's putting in place now have been put in place by the previous administration when we first saw the pest, we wouldn't have seen them destroy the amount of hectares of farms that we've seen this year.
Gakpo, I'll have you hold because the minority will later today make a formal demand to the Speaker to strike out a motion-seeking recession of the approval for the controversial AmeriPower deal. Adansi Asokwa MP Katie Hammond has filed an urgent motion asking that the House rescinds its approval in March last year for the $510 million deal. He claims the deal was inflated, but minority spokesperson on finance, Ato Forting, says the demand is not grounded in law and that will be made known to the Speaker. Let's get updates on that from you, Gakpo. So how soon is this formal demand expected to be made?
That's not going to happen today from the indication that we're getting, because a while ago, there was an adjournment of sitting. Members of Parliament just rose about 5 minutes ago, and the proceedings have been adjourned to tomorrow. And well, one other thing which let me just say is happening is that the majority side is addressing a counter press conference to what the minority addressed earlier, but the House has actually raised it, and so the indication is that the issue of the Ameri deal would not come up. This is an urgent question that was on the order paper for today as well. It's been on the order paper for the last 3 days as an urgent question. Yesterday, from the minority side, the indication was that it was going to be heard today, and that the Honorable Katie Hammond will be given the chance to raise it on the floor of Parliament officially, and then they would put in their demand in terms of the minority that the Speaker objects to it and not allow that the motion be taken at all. But from the side of the majority bench, particularly the majority leader, and even at the level of the Speaker, that is not business that was looked at today to have then given the minorities the opportunity to put in that objection to it. And so looks like we'd have to wait for a lot more days to see that happen. But the House has adjourned, and that is not happening today.
But was Katie Hammond himself in Parliament today, and how has he been reacting to this resistance from the minority?
Himself, he was in Parliament earlier today. In fact, the argument that the minority is making that when it comes to moving a motion on the floor of Parliament, they've had a long-standing conversation about what they call a private members bill, and they quote Article 108 of the Constitution and indicate that it's very clear that if anyone wants to put in any motion as an individual member of Parliament on the floor, the kinds of motion that he needs to put in should not place any financial obligation on government at all. But when it comes to this particular issue of the Ameri deal, the minority spokesperson on finance says a decision to rescind the approval could result in a judgmented situation because Ameri may not be happy and they'll go to court over this, and this could result in a financial obligation on government. So when it comes to Article 108 of the Constitution, no individual MP can raise this. But Katie Hammond says that he thinks that the move that he's making would rather result in government earning money and not losing money. So that gives him the right to raise it on the floor of Parliament and demand for the support of members of Parliament generally for its approval, which would help save the country some resources. So he has the right to that. But the Speaker will determine in due course when the issue is finally heard on the floor of Parliament officially.
I also know that issues of oil revenue for 2015 and 2016 came to bear in Parliament. What exactly was the deliberation about?
And so there was a report which was debated and subsequently approved by Parliament a while ago, and this was the report of the Finance Committee of Parliament on the annual report of the Public Interest and Accountability Committee, that's PIAC, when it comes to the management of petroleum revenues for the year 2015. Well, Chairman of the committee, Dr. Makasibe Ebua, moved that particular motion, which was eventually adopted. One of the key issues that came up was a concern that in the year 2015, the Ghana National Petroleum Corporation gave out loans to a number of agencies, which they've not succeeded in collecting back. And so Parliament is asking them to begin collecting that as soon as possible. Again, there was a concern that the GNPC is investing money in areas which are not exactly their very core duty, including sponsoring the Black Stars. And so Chairman of the Finance Committee, Dr. Makasibe Ebua, is cautioning the GNPC to stop doing that. In fact, the Minister for Monitoring and Evaluation, Dr. Akoto Otei, drew attention that they even go ahead and sponsor the Ghana Black Stars when it comes to some of the activities, which he thinks is completely out of place. And Parliament is demanding that as soon as possible, they desist from doing that and that the Ghana National Petroleum Corporation invest their money only in activities that are within their core domain and not veer into sponsoring Black Stars and undertaking other activities.
And are there other activities that took place that we need to know, Gapo?
Well, one thing which happened earlier in the day was the laying or the presentation of a document to Parliament by the Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs on behalf of the Minister for Foreign Affairs herself. And this document is the agreement between the Republic of Ghana and also the United States of America on the resettlement in Ghana of two former Guantanamo Bay detainees, that's Mohammed Umar Mohammed bin Atef and also Khalid Mohammed Salih al-Dabi. In fact, the indication is that the Supreme Court recently gave an order that within 3 months, this said agreement should be brought to Parliament for ratification, or those two individuals be sent out of the country. earlier in the day, that document, that agreement was laid in Parliament, and it's expected that approval will be given sometime soon. But the minority is unhappy with this because they make the point that there was a question for the Foreign Affairs Minister to come respond to issues pertaining to this particular directive that the Supreme Court gave, but that did not happen, and the majority side went ahead to lay this particular document. So we look forward to the debate and the subsequent approval of this document by Parliament in the days to come.
Many thanks. Opoku Gakpo is our parliamentary correspondent. He's updating us on a lot of things that happened in Parliament. And back to the Fall Army Worm conversation, we have Charles Nyaba on the phone, who is the program officer for the Peasant Farmers Association. Good afternoon to you. We're grateful for your time on The Pulse.
Good afternoon.
So the minister today in Parliament says the army worm has been defeated. Can you confirm this? Hello, Mr. Nyaba, you're still on The Pulse, and the question I ask is, I know you have been on the field. Today, the Minister of Agric is telling Parliament that the army worms have been defeated. True or false?
Yeah, I'm just from the Upper East. I left Accra on Saturday. I went to Techiman, Kintampo, Ejura. From there, I proceeded to Northern Region. I went to Savrogo, I went to Nantong, and then proceeded to Upper East, to Paga, and then the other areas. Sincerely speaking, we thank God. I think the rains played a major role in reducing the spread of the false army worm. Most of the farming communities are visited. I realized that apart from those maize that were affected last 2 weeks, the spread has actually reduced. I asked them whether they have now discovered the chemicals, or is it those new chemicals that the government brought that causes that. Most of the farmers I spoke to said they have not, apart from the concoction they used earlier on, they have not actually used any chemicals. But they realize that when the rains come, even when the worms are there, the following day you realize that the numbers keeps reducing. So that is the situation on the field now.
Well, but let's look at what cue we've taken from this invasion. We know how dangerous it has been, but what recommendation would you give to government, or what recommendations would you give to avoid a recurrence?
Yeah, sincerely speaking, hadn't been because of the false army worm, this year I think Ghana would have made a lot of gains in maize. You know, already we are self-sufficient in terms of maize production. We would have made more to feed our poultry, to feed the country, and for export, because of the planting for food and jobs. Many farmers have actually expanded, and new farmers also came in. So I'm thinking that in going forward, if we should continue the planting for food and jobs, what we need to do is to equip our research institutions so that we start planning towards next year. Because I don't think this is over. Because last year there were infestations in few areas, and this year it spread to almost all the regions and more districts. So we should expect that if you don't do anything to avert this situation, next year the case may even be worse than this year. So what I think we need to do is that we shouldn't relax. We shouldn't just praise ourselves that we've been able to control it. What we need to do is to, when we are doing the budget, is to put money aside. We should try to equip our research institutions. They should start the search now, because most of the chemicals that were supplied this year were not that effective. Most of them were not that effective. So we should start getting the pesticides down, and then also intensify the sensitization to reach all communities, so that next year when it comes, the moment they start seeing the signs, they will know that these are the false army worms, and then they will report for possible control.
All right, many thanks to you. Charles Nyaba is the Programs Officer for the Peasant Farmers Association.